I came back and honestly almost drove past my own house, because I was so used to seeing the line of trees and they weren't there. He cut down all my trees. I immediately went and asked him and he said he had them removed due to being a hazard and that it was legal because the city signed off on it. I was livid but just left and told him to stay off my property. There aren't even stumps. They are completely gone. I asked my other neighbors, one who lives down the road the opposite way and another across the way, what happened, and they said he had a company out there cutting them down all week. One of them asked him about it. And apparently, he showed them some documents from the city that permitted him to remove the trees. I don't even know where to start. It's left that whole area of my property an ugly strip of dirt and loose earth. Whoever removed the trees didn't take out all the stumps. I mean, the classic 2-foot stump wasn't there. They were trimmed down to a few inches. Barely noticeable, and there is a lot of loose dirt like they tried digging or something. I went to the police first thing and asked to report trespassing and possible vandalism. The officer took down my story and I even brought him some photos, which he asked to keep. He then told me, and this kind of pissed me off, that unless I had proof of my neighbor cutting these trees down, or giving the authorization to cut them down, it may turn into my word against my neighbors. He suggested I just pursue this in court myself. While at the police station, I asked who I would talk to specifically with the city about permits and tree removals, and the officer told me to try the public works. I went home and called them. The lady asked for my street address so she could check it against their records and I did, and she found nothing. Not a single thing. She said there was nothing regarding my address or property in the last 6 weeks. I noted that and thanked her. Then I called an arborist and made an appointment for later this week. She also asked that I have some photos of the trees when she comes, which is fine since I have more. Finally, I looked up companies that do landscaping, logging, or tree removal, covering all my bases since I really don't know who would handle tree removal anywhere other than a forest. Anyway, after calling a few places I got one who confirmed that they did the job and told me they were following a city order. That call was after I called the lady at the public works for the city and she told me there was no record of my address. So I have called a lawyer. After some in-depth searching and a few calls, I connected with a local lawyer and we talked for about an hour. He wanted all the details I had, especially when I mentioned the arborist. He asked for the number and told me was going to ask for additional information from the inspection that would be important for a lawsuit. He also gave me the number of a surveyor and told me I should call them ASAP. He then set me up with an appointment at his offices next week after the arborist visit. As far as the criminal charges, he told me that was my call, but we could talk more about it next week. Lastly, he told me not to contact the neighbor anymore, to get a written and signed testimony from the witness neighbor, and to report any documents in the mail from either my neighbor or the company that did the job, as well as refusing contact should the neighbor come to my door. Update: I hauled his ass into court. Well, first, the arborist came, as did the surveyor. The trees were on my property and they were white oaks. The arborist gave me an estimate on having 15 mature white oaks brought and replanted on my property, which was just shy of $650,000, though he did say some trees would die and that would drive the cost up. I also had my property appraised, for the difference before and after losing my trees. It then became a question of whether I wanted to pursue my lost trees and see how much their lumber was worth, or sue for the replacement cost and loss of property value. Well, I picked the trees. The actual court stuff started a lot sooner than I thought. We filed, a few weeks passed, and a few days before our day in court his lawyer reached out with a settlement offer. Apparently, he was wealthier than I thought. We accepted, and while I can't speak to the details of it, I'm getting the trees back. It's going to take a long time apparently, but I will have all 12 trees back on my property at no cost to me. My neighbor has also put his house up for sale, and I haven't seen him for quite some time now.